As always, Lightin the Lamp, episode 2. Joining me today, as always, from at NHL Discussion on Instagram. Find him there. Give him a like. Anthony Jacob. Anthony, you're at the gym blowing off some steam, I guess, because it was not a very good-looking game last night for the Winnipeg Jets. We're in agreement on that, right?
Yeah, it was a bit of an ugly game and the late start, too. I'm sure it put a couple people to bed, and they fell asleep early, but at least it was a close game for the most part. But yeah, it wasn't pretty for either team, I don't think.
Would you expect, playing a team 4 times in a row now, 3 at home, 1 on the road, are you sick and tired of seeing somebody? And are we seeing some, I don't want to say some less energetic hockey already, only 10, 15 games in?
Yeah, I've noticed that around the league, not only with the Jets and Flames. With the Flames, you kind of expect things to get more physical and ramped up the intensity throughout a series like this, but it just didn't really happen. I thought lots of the games throughout the 4-game series lacked intensity. And yeah, I guess it's strange that we're 15 games in and we're already talking about the mid-season blues, but I guess in a 56-game season, I guess that's where we're at.
It looks like that, and you're absolutely right. Like, you watch around the league, and I see periods of the game in not just Northern Division games, but other divisions, where there's a lot of standing around, where it's just like there's just not entertained to get into the ozone, or they're just playing the position to play the position. Like, there's no intensity going out there right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So the Jets lose 3-2. Maybe we will comment on the officiating, but not harp on it that much. But a goal scored with 1:42 left in the third on a power play on a questionable high sticking call on the shortest player of the Calgary Flames. And did the stick even touch Johnny Gaudreau in the face? I'm not too sure. Nonetheless, he pulled off a great Oscar and almost got some blood at the same time by biting his bottom lip. The Flames go on a power play. They score. They win the game 3-2. If you watched the game last night, Anthony, you probably could have picked out 5 or 6 other penalties that could have been called in the previous 40 minutes of that game that weren't. Was it really important to call that last one to give that upper hand to the home team 3 minutes left?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I thought it was a bit of a questionable penalty, but what I always say is if you lose a game because of the reffing, I don't think you played good enough. And that was certainly the case for the Jets yesterday. I don't think they deserved to win the game, although I don't know if the Flames deserve to win the game either. So it's unfortunate when a reffing decision like that impacts what happens in the game. But at the end of the day, it was a bit of a weak goal on Hellebuyck's part. I'm not sure that one should have gone in, and it's just the way it goes, I guess.
You bring up Colin Hellebuyck, 3 goals, 29 shots. Obviously, the third one, as well as the first one. Watching that one with Mangiapane in front, just like that, there was no excitement to get rid of the puck in front of the net. And in the third one, it goes off Josh Morrissey's stick and it dribbles over the pad or under the pad or something, like you said, probably could have been stopped easily.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty lackluster game from the whole blue line. They've been playing a lot more solid than we expected them to this season, but Derek Forbert got blown around a couple times last night. We haven't really seen that from him yet this season. He's been very solid defensively for the most part. I thought Morrissey kind of fell back a bit from how he's been playing the last week or two. And the whole defense corps just didn't look as strong as we've been seeing from the rest of the season from them.
The anticipation wasn't there. I noticed on a lot of forward to backward transitions, just a little bit extra step, a little bit slower coming out of the gate. One in particular, I saw Dylan. I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but I'm watching Dylan DeMello go from forwards to backwards and backwards to forwards, and I'm just not seeing that quick first step. And maybe it was something that the entire team was under. Maybe just a bit of a casting of a spell, so to speak, where they just weren't looking forward to going to Calgary for a 1-game road trip. Now, that's something that's awkward, something that Jets haven't been involved with, but it's weird to see a team just to go for 1 game and then come back, considering how the schedule has been set up with longer home and longer away setups.
Yeah, that's not an excuse they can take though, because they've been playing like that their entire career. And yeah, DeMello did look a little slow. All the defensemen looked a little slow last night. And that is a bit concerning, but it is one game, and every team is off games. But we certainly hope that they can rebound against the Senators coming up here.
Absolutely. We'll get to that later, the schedule for the remainder of this week coming up. But Anthony Jacob here at NHL.discussion on Instagram, joining me as always. Anthony, let's get to the real crux of today's discussion. January 18th was the last time Pierre-Luc Dubois played in a professional hockey game with Columbus. He cleared. He's gone through his quarantine time. He's practiced with the Jets 3 or 4 days prior to. We finally get to see him in that 13 jersey. What was your first initial thoughts of how well he played last night?
I thought it was a very quiet game from him, especially the first. I don't think I even noticed him touching the puck for the first 10 minutes or so of the game. We saw some good plays off the rush from him, but his line in general, I thought him and Kyle Connor didn't quite mesh together quite yet, and I'm not sure that Trevor Lewis playing with two skilled players is something that's going to work moving forward. It's not a role that he's used to. I'm not sure if you could call that a third line because Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor are both pretty much first line players. And he wasn't on PP1. We did see him a bit on the second power play. But I think he hasn't played in, like we said, more than 2 weeks. And so it's going to take a while for him to transition in. But this isn't the Pierre-Luc Dubois that we should be expecting moving forward. I know he had one great rush, a couple other good plays with his stick and using his big frame. And so we'll see more from him moving forward. But the first game was a little quiet from PLD.
Can you give him a letter grade, considering the fact that it is his first, professional hockey game in almost 3 weeks?
I'd almost give it an incomplete, just because the role he was put in, that's not where he's supposed to be playing. He's supposed to be a minute munching center, a shutdown center. If I had to give him a grade, maybe a B minus. I don't think there was anything he did wrong last night, but I didn't think that his game shone either.
Absolutely. The first game back, PLD had no shots on goal. He was a -1 for the game, 13-10 ice time. Comparing to his other line mates of the night, Trevor Lewis was 10:50 time on ice, and Kyle Connor had a 17:12. When we talk about the trade now, let's quickly touch on this because Jack Roslovic has now been moved to the Columbus first line, playing over 21 minutes in their last game. And we saw Patrik Laine get benched in the third period. Is that expected of him and his play, or is that just Tortorella's just saying what we need you to do is what you're not doing, so you got to pick up your socks, so to speak, Patrik Laine?
Yeah, I'll first touch on the ice time. Pierre-Luc Dubois is someone who's going to be playing, if not 20 minutes a night, close to it for the Jets within the coming weeks. And so that's when we're really going to see what he can bring to the table. For the Blue Jackets, the Line A benching, that's really interesting. I've heard a lot of people who said, who've been saying online that Patrik Laine is never going to work in Columbus, that he's never going to work with John Tortorella. And I look at it a different way. I look at it that it's going to have to work, and Patrik Laine is going to have to work. He already got his request to move to a new team, to get a fresh start. And guess what? If he's not going to work hard on the Blue Jackets, then Tortorella is going to continue to sit him. I know they said that it was actually because he was mouthing off to a coach. That's the report that's come out. But at the end of the day, I watched that game against Carolina, and his intensity was not good. He lost assignments in his own end. And if he's going to be doing that, then he's going to be benched. And I watched the Columbus Blue Jackets play a couple times the last couple weeks, and they're not the most skilled team ever. But you look at every single one of those forwards, every single one of the defensemen, they're willing to play physical. They work hard in their battles. They attack pucks. And every single loose puck, they're giving it their all. And Laine's got to get that intensity into him because at the end of the day, that's the way that the Columbus Blue Jackets win. They win from grinding out teams, winning battles, working harder than the other team. And right now, Patrik Laine just doesn't have that in his game. he is skilled. He's already scored a goal for the Blue Jackets, but I think even Jack Roslovic has showed a lot more feistiness to his game, and he is one of the more skilled players on the Blue Jackets. He has a lot of potential, and I do really wish that the Winnipeg Jets gave him an opportunity in a top six role for an extended period of time, because I think he can be a successful offensive player. And we saw with his highlight reel game-winning goal where he went around multiple defenders, showing his hands, showing his dangles. Jack Roslovic's a really skilled player. And I think if he can keep up that feistiness that he's shown in the first few games, that he could really stick as a top six forward for the Blue Jackets.
No, absolutely. We talk about giving Jack Roslovic his time, top six forward land in Winnipeg. How do you replace one of those top six forwards and give Jack a chance for an extended period of time? And that just wasn't available. That opportunity just wasn't there. So I like what he's done. Columbus, like you said, hardworking, bring your lunch pail to work, blue collar attitude day in and day out. That's what John Tortorella needs. No doubt about it. Do you think PLD is happier, obviously, not being under that watchful eye of Torts?
Yeah, I think so. And it's certainly a more relaxed situation in Winnipeg. I know Columbus is also a smaller market, not in terms of the fan. Obviously, Winnipeg's fan base is terrific, but a smaller market team in terms of how big the audience is. But yeah, you do get thrown into the fire a lot more by Torts. And in Winnipeg, Maurice likes to protect his players more, especially his top players. He's very rare to throw them under the bus too hard. So, yeah, it's going to be a transition for him. But once he gets that ice time up and into a bigger role, I'm sure we're going to see a very impactful player for the Jets.
No, I look forward to seeing his time on ice increase. I look forward to seeing the one thing I really noticed last night that I know that is part of his game is how hard he is below the goal line and in front of the net and his drive to the net. That is something as a second line, first line center to gobble up minutes and to have that style of play up the middle is very rare to see. And I look forward to seeing him take over that role once given that opportunity. Now, this either leaves a good problem or a bad problem, depending on how you look at it. We saw tremendous jumping around with the lines, the combinations last night. Almost looked disorganized from Coach Paul Maurice. What are your thoughts on how all of these lineup matches were really looking, and nothing truly stayed consistent? I mean, if you look at the time on ice of that lineup, as we mentioned, PLD with 13, T. Lou with 1050, and then 81 had over 17. So they were playing other minutes or less minutes with other lineups. We'll get to Vesalainen in a second, but the real unit that only stayed together was the top line of Ehlers, Scheifele, and Kopp.
And that was the only good line, really, that created chances in the offensive zone consistently. And I really like what the top line's bringing. I think it's bringing out a lot more of Mark Scheifele to have that speedster on his line and Nikolai Ehlers. We saw them play together a couple of years ago, and I think that chemistry is continuing now. And I love what Andrew Kopp brings. I think he's a lot smarter of an offensive player than he's given credit for. I think he's creating plays, playing hard, and really complementing those two skilled players. And if Nikolai Ehlers is going to keep on putting up the offensive production, then I'm good with that top line. And I think it gives you a lot more options on the bottom three lines for creating depth scoring when maybe we were questioning whether they had that in especially last year. Moving on to what the lineups could look like going forward, I like Kyle Connor with Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think it's going to take a while for them to mesh together and get that chemistry going. I think they need a better right winger than Trevor Lewis. He can't keep up to those two skilled guys at this point in his career. We like Wheeler and Stastny together. They've been putting up points on the power play, but I think they've been, especially the last couple of weeks, they've been pretty quiet, 5-on-5. And we'll talk about Christian Vesalainen, but that line was fairly quiet last night. So then I question, who do you move up with them? Maybe you move Wheeler up to play with Connor and Dubois. Maybe if you're going to leave Adam Lowry as the fourth line center, I know him and Appleton have played extremely well together, but maybe you even move Mason Appleton up to play with Connor and Dubois, because he's been playing excellent hockey, and maybe giving him a shot in the top six would be a good idea.
Yeah, I know it's one of those things where you saw. I mean, I have to give a shout out to my boy at the Athletic, Murata Tess. He talked to me yesterday about him devising the importance of having Kyle Connor, a speedy winger, a shot first guy, but a pass guy as well, working with PLD, who drives to the net and plays that middle very, very strong. So I do like that combination. Like you said, T. Lewis on that side. I don't know what you're going to add to that. I mean, I saw Lowry get thrown on the wing with Wheeler, and then you see Vesalainen working with Stastny and Wheeler, and then you see T. Lewis working with another combination, and then you got to think Jansen Harkins gets booted out and Vesalainen stays in, and you got to bring Nate Thompson back in too, because he's looking to get back in the front 12. So let's quickly talk about how Christian Vesalainen gets his shot with two phenomenal forwards, a defensive-minded center, Stastny, who plays more of a defensive position now. But Blake Wheeler just hasn't found his groove, and he's been playing all over the place. And then you give Christian Vesalainen his opportunity finally to play in a top six scenario. What were your thoughts on him and how he looked last night, considering the fact that this is finally his first chance to play decent minutes with the big squad?
I've been very underwhelmed by Vesalainen the entire season. Going back to last season, where it really started was actually in the preseason last year, where I thought he was going to be someone who was going to crack the Jets' top 9 last year. He didn't show anything in training camp last year. Didn't show a ton with the Moose, and now he's coming in here and he's finally getting his shot to play in a top 6 role, because he's been up with the Jets on the fourth line, even on the third line at times, and his game just doesn't work there. I know he's a bigger guy, and I liked his game on the wall a bit better yesterday. I thought he was cycling the puck a bit better, winning some battles better, but that's something that he's struggled with in the past. And because of that, he is more of a skill player. He's someone who needs to play with good players. He's someone who needs to get minutes. He's someone who eventually needs to get time on the power play. And I haven't seen it from him so far that he's able to keep up with those top 6 guys. And we just looked up that he is eligible to go down to the Manitoba Moose if that were to happen. And especially when we're talking about Jansen Harkins, he's been such a workhorse for the Jets, and I don't see what Vesalainen brings to the lineup. I know if the Jets continue to win as they are right now, the last couple of weeks, perhaps you can continue to give him a good shot at a top 6 role. But I just see someone like Jansen Harkins bringing more to the lineup than Vesalainen does. But at this point, he's already 3-4 years past his draft year. At a certain point, you have to give him some time to flourish, because you can't just keep sending him back down to the Moose, sending him back down to the Moose, and for him to continue to stagnate his development there. At some point, something's got to give, and he's either got to make his worth in a top 6 role, maybe even on the third line, or the Jets have to consider if maybe this experiment is starting to run out of time.
You're right, and I hate to say I don't want to call it the experiment, but it really isn't an experiment. 2 players we talked on real quick, Nate Thompson, but one we haven't mentioned. Why wouldn't someone like Mason Appleton be considered for that wing spot with Stastny and Wheeler? I mean, he's roughly, like you said, 3 or 4 years out of his draft year. He was drafted because of his offensive upside. He has truly developed his defensive side of the game. Why wouldn't Mason Appleton be given that opportunity as opposed to Christian Vesalainen?
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. Appleton was a skilled player before he was drafted, he was a skilled player with the Manitoba Moose. He had to grind it out on the Jets' fourth line and finding ice time. And I think that's what Vesalainen is going to have to do. He's going to have to progress like Appleton has. And I think that now that his defensive game and his work ethic and how hard he's working has developed and is now from not, coming in with the Jets, maybe that was a bit of a weakness. Now it's a strength to his game. And he does have a lot of skill to his game too. And I think he can complement top players like Stastny and Wheeler very well and perhaps give them a little more energy that I don't think that Vesalainen brings. So I would like to see Appleton, whether it's playing with Dubois and Connor or Stastny and Wheeler, I think he brings the energy. I think he brings the skill, and I'd like to see that in the coming games.
You know what? I didn't even think about putting Appleton with Connor and Dubois. That might be even a better fit because two speeds and two offensive-minded wingers.
And he can stay on the right side then.
You'd have to, yeah. And then would you move Connor then? Is that what you'd do?
Well, I think you'd leave him on the right side then and leave Connor on the left.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's probably a good idea. I agree with you on that one. Maybe we'll see that this upcoming weekend as the Jets can say goodbye to the Flames. They come home for a couple against the Senators, and then those Senators, they don't get a bit of a break because they get to go to Toronto or deal with Toronto shortly thereafter. And your Toronto Maple Leafs are certainly showing their best side right now. I mean, Jason Spezza's got a hat trick this past week. You've got your top six scoring when they need to, and they really beat up on the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, Vancouver was 0-5 in their last 5. Let's talk a little more about this Northern Division as we move around here. What impresses you the most about your Leafs right now?
That's a good question. I haven't seen this since the Matthews era begun. It seems like the Leafs, there's always something missing. Every game, it seems like either the work ethic's not there or there's too many defensive flaws or just something's not quite right. And one of the big things that I saw the other night against Vancouver when they only had 8 shots or something like that going into the third period, and they ended up winning the game. They scored 2 goals quickly back to back and ended up holding that lead. And I think that's the difference between a good team and a great team is a great team finds a way to win games that maybe they shouldn't have. And last year and in years past, the Leafs were a good team that found ways to lose games they should have won. And it seems like this year it's almost the opposite. And if the Leafs are going to win this division and if they're going to go somewhere in the playoffs this year, they have to continue to find ways to win these games that maybe they shouldn't and make sure that they're not blowing leads like they've been very prone to doing in recent seasons. Austin Matthews is on fire. He's scored goals in, I think, 8 straight games now. Mitch Marner's up there in points as well as he's definitely getting Hart Trophy consideration right now along with Matthews.
It still is early. Don't count your chickens just yet, Mr. Anthony.
Yeah, but they've been great. The bottom 6 has been a bit quieter. Tavares and Nylander have been a bit quieter as of recently, but Freddie Anderson's been solid. Muzzin and Hall, Riley and Brody, whoever's playing on the third pair, even Zach Bogosian's been pretty solid, which I was a little skeptical whether he could keep up to the pace of the game, but he's brought some physicality to the Leafs. So has Wayne Simmons before he got injured. And at a certain point, they're going to need some more scoring from that bottom 6. Because Matthews, I'm sorry to say it, but as much as I want him to score every night, he's not going to score every game. Mitch Marner's not going to get 3 points every game. And so at a certain point, they're going to need some of their depth signings like Jimmy Vesey. They're going to need Kerfoot or Mikheyev to put up some points. Once Thornton is back, they're going to need some production out of him, as well as Simmons. I know Spezza's put up some unexpected offensive numbers this season. I'm not sure that's going to continue, but they're going to need to find some offense in that bottom 6 once those top players go dry, because it is going to happen eventually.
So we bring up the top 6 forwards of the Leafs performing very well. Before we get on to the other teams, is the Joe Thornton line 1 experiment done? When he comes back in the lineup, is he going back top six, or is he now going into bottom six, being more of a role player, much like a Spezza, much like a Simmons?
Yeah, interesting because I like Zach Hyman a lot on the top line, and I think that's how the Leafs best line up. But if you put Thornton on a fourth line, I'm a bit concerned about that because then you have Spezza and Thornton on the same line. They're both very old, they're both very slow, and this is a team that's supposed to be centered around speed and skill. And if you put Thornton and Spezza on the same line, you're kind of moving away from that. And so at that point, is Thornton even a viable option in the lineup? He's been good on the power play. He didn't look terrible with Matthews and Marner, but I just feel like having both those two veterans on the same line and having Simmons, who isn't very quick either, I just don't think it works very well. And in that case, I'd almost rather have someone like Pierre Engvall in the bottom six for the Leafs, who brings a lot of speed, maybe not as much offensive skill or as much experience, but when you have a team that's centered around speed and skill, I don't know if having a line that lacks that much foot speed is going to work.
You bring up an important point. One thing that is different about the Leafs compared to every other Northern Division team is their bottom six is very mature. A lot of great talent, a lot of in their heyday. But now these are the players that are kind of aging out, almost retiring, but they're still finding roles for them to play. And I think that's what was lacking in years earlier with the Leafs when Austin Matthews was there. They didn't have that that maturity in the back end, but also that role model perhaps on the team. I mean, who has Austin Matthews really had a chance to look up to now when you think about this year's roster compared to previous? There was never a Matt Sundin, but go before Matt Sundin, there was never a player like Eddie Olczyk, or there was never a defenseman like, I can't think. I mean, there's not that role model-esque kind of veteran on the Leafs. And now you have two of them, Daddy Spezza and Big Joe Thornton. I mean, that's got to prove dividends for these younger players to hear the storylines and hear about the work ethic that they themselves have had to go through, seeing these youngsters and doing what they're doing now.
And it seems like all the young guys love the veterans that come in. I know Matthews and Marner, they loved having Patrick Marleau when he was with the Leafs. I know they love Spezza, they love Thornton. And so I think it's a good thing for the dressing room to bring in these older guys. I think the experience is definitely good. The foot speed is the biggest issue, but as long as they have a couple of speedier guys to complement them, I think they can still keep up.
The big difference between what we see in Toronto and Edmonton is that veteranship on the back end, but also I think the Oilers are a clear-cut example of what happens when that top line doesn't score. They lose games.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you saw the stat I put up last night that the Oilers won a game without getting a point from McDavid or Draisaitl for the first time since November 2017.
That's incredible.
It's crazy. I saw it on Twitter from Dmitry Filipovich, I believe, and I thought he was joking at first. Like, I thought it was just a joke that hadn't even been researched, but I got it from other sources, and it was actually true. And that's just crazy that they rely on those two players for offense so much. And they just struggle so much to find depth scoring. They struggle to defend.
They struggle everywhere except for the top line.
Yeah, they do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and their goaltending situation, I don't think didn't improve at all in the offseason, and that's going to show right now where it's basically just picket fences and broken glass between the pipes.
Yeah, it's not very good. It's not pretty in Oil City whatsoever. It might even be worse in Vancouver, though.
I was going there right next, but you go ahead, take it with me.
Okay, yeah. Their goaltending hasn't been good enough either. The defense has not been pretty whatsoever. one of the biggest disappointments, I think, has been Nate Schmidt hasn't been that top guy that he was in Vegas. Um, he's looked a lot slower and a lot more hesitant with the Vancouver Canucks than he did in a Vegas Golden Knights uniform. So same with Quinn Hughes, great offensive player, so smart, but so many times I see guys winning battles against him in the defensive zone, and it ends up turning into a great offensive chance or a goal against. The entire blue line just doesn't look good. Tyler Myers is no longer a top four defenseman. He's being thrown on with Nate Schmidt at times, and that pairing just doesn't work. Alex Edler even has taken a step back. I mean, that whole blue line just isn't good enough to compete with the top of the Canadian division whatsoever.
I couldn't agree with you more. Tyler Myers, Nate Schmidt, those guys are supposed to be the solid D1, D2 pairing group, and they haven't performed well at all. I think losing Chris Tanev in the offseason is truly showing its colors right now. And unfortunately, Quentin Hughes is maybe having that sophomore, junior jinx that Cale Makar isn't. And it goes to show when you have players not really performing on the front end, like Peterson and Horvat and Brock Besser, they're not scoring like they're supposed to. It's putting a lot more pressure on that defense to perform. Thatcher Demko, I mean, he had a couple of games where he was lights out playoff wise a week ago, but he's back to being a number. Like, I think they've got two number two goalies in Vancouver. They don't have a one goalie.
Yeah, I think they thought they had two number ones. I think Demko might be able to become a number one, but clearly he's not ready for that now. They thought maybe they could get more out of Holtby in a new environment. Maybe he's actually fallen off the cliff and it's not going to come back for him. But I think you did bring up a very good point about the loss of Chris Tanev. I know he's not the most flashy guy in the world, and even with the Flames, he hasn't been super flashy whatsoever, but he's just a steadying presence. And I think he's really elevated Noah Hannafin's game with the Calgary Flames and brought him into more of an impact defenseman. I think he could have done that for Quinn Hughes in Vancouver, and he's not a game breaker, but they just are lacking that steadying presence, that veteran presence that we've been talking about all episode. And they were hoping maybe Travis Hamonic could bring that when they signed him, but I believe he's injured now, and they just don't seem to have anyone else who can steady things down when they need that.
You've got Quinn Hughes leading the Vancouver Canucks with a goal and 16 helpers, but he's a minus 13. Top forward is Besser with a minus 6, but he's sitting at 15 points. So you've got a couple of guys that are almost at a point per game, but at the same time, all those players are negative plus minus. I'm a big plus minus guy, and it shows me who's playing a better 200-foot game. You bring up Calgary, Chris Tanev is there. I'm seeing better secondary scoring from the Flames. They need more goal scoring from their top line. This Sam Bennett topic that's going on, asking for a trade, not getting the trade, not playing up to his performance. When it comes to a player speaking out publicly about this, whether it's him or his agent, why does that just sound terrible for your trade opportunities as opposed to just being quiet and playing your game and then, keeping those conversations between you and the owners or you and the GM?
I think at the end of the day, I think it's going to affect the team more than it's going to affect Bennett, because now every general manager in the league knows that they have to move Sam Bennett, and that really takes away a lot of their negotiation in trade talks. But for Sam Bennett, compared to other players like PLD and other guys who've wanted to trade in the past, what I've been impressed with is at first he was struggling to perform. Then he was a healthy scratch, but I thought last night he was working hard. I thought he had a lot of chances around the net. I think he showed some speed that he doesn't that we haven't necessarily seen from him in the past. So for Sam Bennett, I like the effort that he's putting in despite this trade. I'm happy that he hasn't already packed his suitcase and is waiting at the door. He's still showing teams what he can bring. And maybe at the end of the day, the Flames have gone to him and said, look, there's not a ton of interest in you unless you start picking up your game a bit. we're not sure if we can move you right now. And so maybe that's where they are right now. But I like that he's still working hard and bringing that heavy game that he's played with the last couple of years.
You do bring up that point about, you have to show us you still want to play hockey, and you have to be a viable trade piece for us to try to move you. We're not just going to give you away. Sam Bennett was he not like a 4th overall pick in the first round?
Yeah,
Like,
he
there's
was.
a huge potential.
He was one of those players who was drafted as a skill player, and then it just never worked out for him, and so he had to transition, and he's turned into a good power forward. It was a bit of a tough transition for him, but he's playing that heavy game, and I know it's not what you expect out of a 4th overall pick, but it's better than nothing. I think he's still someone who is a valuable piece on a team, even though he's not putting up big offensive numbers. I think he's still a key. And he has produced in the postseason. I know it's a very small sample size, but he's someone who has put up numbers in the playoffs, and he plays that playoff brand of hockey. So I know that moving on from a 4th overall pick and probably not getting a lot back from him is tough from a Calgary Flames perspective, but they still did get a legitimate NHL player, and that's better than him completely busting altogether.
You're absolutely right. Let's move out east. We talked about Toronto. We've talked a little bit of Ottawa. Ottawa's got a hard 4 or 5 games ahead of them. I mean, let's not be unreal here. I mean, they're playing Winnipeg. They're playing Toronto. 2 very powerful teams that love to take advantage of young teams making mistakes. Is Ottawa? I mean, Ottawa probably will finish 7th, but do you see their game improving, playing these harder teams now?
I think at some point they are going to. They're a young team. They're an inexperienced team, and I don't think their veterans have played very good either. I saw the other day that they're already trying to trade Derek Stepan.
Yeah.
They just traded for. They're going to be moving other guys at the deadline. One thing about Ottawa that I've kind of questioned is they brought in a ton of veterans to play on the blue line, whether that's Braden Coburn, Nikita Zaitsev, the list goes on of veteran defensemen they brought in. I would really like to see some younger guys in there. Top prospect from a couple of years ago, Erica Branson. I'd love to see him play. I know probably not this year, but I'd like to see Jake Sanderson get some time next year. Other guys like Max Lajoie, who got time a couple of years ago and looked good, but now he's kind of been pushed out of the lineup by veterans. I wish they gave some of that ice time to the younger players because I think they deserve it. And up front, I think they're going to get some. I think they're going to get some wins from those young guys. Brady Tkachuk hasn't put up the offensive numbers, but I think he leads the league in shots on goal or something like that. And he's just been extremely unlucky and unable to finish his chances the last couple of years. So I think eventually, once he gets a bit of a better finishing touch, he's really going to explode and put up good offensive numbers. Josh Norris and Drake Batherson have played well. I think eventually they're going to go on a hot streak. And I think they are a team that they have the skill, those young guys, to steal some games from other teams. It might not be many, but I definitely see it happening. They're not going to win 2 out of every 10. I think that's going to come a bit, definitely improve a bit in the coming weeks and months of the season.
Certainly giving those youngsters a chance to play on the blue line. I think one thing Coach DJ's kind of realized is there's been far too many mistakes played on the ice, and they just can't keep giving good teams all of these opportunities when they make these poor decisions on the ice. So I look for Ottawa to become an improved team as well. Last topic before I let you go, Anthony, this afternoon here on Lightin the Lamp. You got your thinking hat on. Pretend you're coach or you're Mario Lemieux in Pittsburgh. Why do you look at Ron Hextall and Brian Burke to be your next front office guys to fill in for Rutherford, who left a couple of weeks back?
It's just the way the NHL works. They don't go for they just love recycling the same guys. And I think Brian Burke's a very smart man. I think he knows a lot about how to run an organization, and I think Ron Hextall does as well. But I would have liked to have new ideas, a younger mind in there, perhaps someone like myself. Uh,
Or
but
me.
yeah, yeah, either of us. But no, they are very smart hockey people. They know how to run an organization, but they need to move away from Jim Rutherford, who I think is a lot like Ron Hextall and Brian Burke. They're older minds. They're guys who maybe don't look into advanced stats as much as a younger mind would, and maybe they don't analyze the game quite as well. And I think the Penguins really have thrown away the last couple of years of Malkin and Crosby's prime just by the bad moves and the bad contracts they've given not very good players. And that's something that Jim Rutherford's did with the Penguins, and I think that's something that Ron Hextall might continue to do. But he when you look over to what Hextall built with the Flyers, I mean that's turning into a very good young team. I think when he left, there were still question marks about is this team really going to improve and go into the upper echelon to the NHL, and they really have. And I think a lot of that credit should be given to Hextall to build those young players, to still have those veterans locked up. And the Penguins, I think, are a couple moves away from still being a contender. But when Rutherford locked all these older guys up to such big contracts, they're just in such a salary cap jam that it's hard to make moves to improve. And so I don't know. I know they have a lot of experience, and that's certainly what Mario Lemieux wanted. But I'm not sure they're the right hires for the Penguins at this point in where that organization is.
Who has ultimate veto power, Burke or Hextall?
That's interesting. Probably, I guess you have to say Brian Burke. Obviously,
I'm curious to see how that relationship is going to build.
yeah,
I really thought Brian Burke was done with being behind a bench or involved in an organization. He proved me wrong. I thought maybe the fact he made the move because he didn't want to be conferred to the next Don Cherry.
they're definitely two very open people, very enthusiastic people, and very strong opinionated people. Hextall and Burke. So I wonder how that is going to work together. I'm sure they've had all sorts of discussions already together, and so I'm really interested to see that how that front office will work. Maybe at this point in his career, Brian Burke's more of just overseeing things and making sure that nothing's falling off the rails in the organization, and maybe he lets Ron Hextall take the reins and do more of the day-to-day trade signings, movements, and he's kind of more overseeing things. I'm not sure how it's going to work, but maybe that's how Berkey's looking at it.
I agree. I mean, maybe Ron Hextall will teach Tristan Jarry how to swing a stick a little better, perhaps how to attack a defenseman like Chris Chilios in the corner if he's offside, know how to give the old slash to the back of the knees, regardless. Ron Hextall, the new GM in Pittsburgh, and he's got a counterpart in Brian Burke. I look at this similar to how the Leafs had Shanny and Lou Lamoriello at a couple years back, and now Lou has moved to the New York Islanders, working with Trotzy over there, and they're doing something in the Islands. We haven't talked much about these other American divisions, which we'll get to next week, because we're focused so much on the Northern Division, how exciting the hockey is, but maybe we're getting into that pre-season, that mid-season slump already. We're just fed up talking about it. I don't think so. We're going to have lots of discussion about that coming up. Speaking of discussion, I know you were working on some trophies and whatnot. We'll get to that next week, Anthony, and their values and their assessments. What's going on top of that with NHL discussion on Instagram?
Yeah, we're going to get a little more into that this week. Hopefully get into some Hart Trophy, some Selke. I know we just did Norris Trophy, but maybe we can look back at that again. It's tough because of all these COVID delays and postponements. I know the Canucks have 16 games played now or something, and some other teams are barely have played 10. So it's a little tough to weigh, obviously the counting stats like, oh, McDavid has 25 points. Well, someone someone on a team that's played 9-10 games, they're not going to be able to have 25 points. So it's a little bit tougher right now to determine how much sample size affects who's the leaders in which trophy category. But I guess we'll get into that further next week, I guess.
Look forward to seeing who you think your front runners are for those big trophies here in the NHL. Anthony, I want to thank you very much for joining me again this afternoon. Truly a great discussion. The Jets, once again, losing 3-2 to Calgary. They'll be taking on the Senators this weekend. The Leafs, they're taking on not the Senators yet.
They're playing the Canadians.
They got the Canadians. They got the
Canadian
Habs. So
Saturday, yeah.
that'll be a battle of 1-2. Maybe Jeff Petrie still stays on top of the goal scoring or the points for defensemen. I don't know. Will remain to be seen, right?
Yeah, I'm really excited for the top two Canadian teams to face off tonight. So we'll see how that goes.
Anthony Jacob at NHL.discussion. Check him out. Like him on Instagram. Thanks for watching Lightin the Lamp, episode 2. We'll be back with you Wednesday at 1 o'clock. We'll talk more Jets, more Leafs, as well as we will look at some more headline discussions that have occurred over the last coming week. Thanks so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. Be safe. And enjoy that beautiful vortex winter out there, right, Anthony?
Yeah, no kidding. Sure been cold.
Take care, everyone, and stay warm. Bye-bye for now.